Or, as I've been known to say, the sea is silent.
We're ready to go? Hope you're not rolling yet. We need one more director.
Hey guys.
Okay, we are ready to go. Welcome to the November special and regular meeting of the Granada Community Services District. We have an action item from the special meeting, and so we are still in the special meeting, and we will do the normal meeting opening after we handle this item. And the item is consideration of allowing use of the district's Burnham Strip property for erosion project staging. I asked to put this on the agenda because I got an email from our district county supervisor, Don Horsley, asking if the district would be willing to allow a portion of the Burnham Strip property to be used for staging during the erosion repair project that they are going to launch into at Surfers Beach, and I wanted people to be aware of this. I asked for some more specifics about where and when, etc., and so far all we've gotten is that they're talking about, according to the county's consultants, a 100 by 100 foot square area somewhere on our property, and for a duration of 12 weeks. But they don't have a start date. So we don't know when those 12 weeks would commence, and we don't know exactly where they'd like to put this 100 by 100 foot
Okay, I'm glad
staging area.
I'm glad you put this on the agenda because I don't care where they want to put it. It's going to go where we say it's okay. And so what I would suggest to the board is that we have the board president appoint a committee of himself and myself to work with them and agree on a location that's acceptable to us and the community. Not the way Sam's contractor just picked a spot and piled huge amounts of garbage right smack in the center of the view corridor a couple of years ago. That kind of stunt is not going to happen again. So I think we need to have direct involvement on the location by directors.
Would there be a reason they couldn't use the currently destroyed area, commonly known as a parking lot?
That would be where I would direct them to, probably
It's like,
toward the what most people think of as the southern end. It's actually the eastern end.
that's okay.
But like I said, we need to meet with the people on site and go over exactly what their requirements are and where we think it's acceptable to put it. And in particular, that means not on any currently undisturbed areas. You know, certain parts of the property are badly impacted and other parts are not, and I don't want any more to be impacted by this kind of use.
I mean, just in general, I would like to work with the county.
Sure.
So if we can, it can't possibly hurt us to work with them. I mean, it's just a good thing. And if we can get them to use the part that's already destroyed.
Right, but I don't, you know, they might want to put it just right next to the skateboard ramp, you know, which to me is a non-starter for view reasons.
Well, I actually responded to the supervisor with two comments. One is that although everyone thinks our property goes right to the highway, there's a big strip there that is actually Caltrans right-of-way. And this might fit in their on Caltrans property, and Caltrans is involved in the project.
Not as a square, though.
So let them, so let them also work on that, and that we would probably be happier about allowing this to happen if, say, that great big mud hole out there in the parking lot would be filled by the end of this.
Well, but you have to understand there's one particular community member who's digging that hole on purpose. The the same guy who is driving across the Harbor District's property from the house that actually fronts onto Alhambra. I've seen him out there intentionally doing donuts there to make that hole. So until the county arrests him, I don't want the hole fixed.
Well,
In any case, even if they do it.
Okay.
I don't know what to say about that.
Even if they do it on the Caltrans right away, we still need to influence where it goes, because they're not gonna care about community concerns. They're gonna do it what's just most convenient for them, and, you know, once again, the community's gonna get screwed, and I'm tired of it.
Well, they will want to do what is best for them to efficiently do their project. So, but I have also asked for more details about exactly what they're talking about. Supervisor Horsley said he could come to tonight's meeting, but I wanted to just make people aware of this first, and I will ask again for more details. For instance, are they going to just haul their equipment and materials up the embankment and across the highway, or are they gonna drive across, all the way across our property with heavy equipment a lot of times?
They,
And,
they're gonna need a crane, and the only way they're gonna do it is they're gonna have to shift the southbound traffic over to make room to put the crane up above, because they cannot get permits to put it on the beach.
Right, so there are a lot of details like that, so I certainly don't advocate saying, yes, do whatever you want. But I also don't think we need to be overly restrictive. And as Rick said, I'd like to see us cooperate with the county and Caltrans even to get this project done, because it's needed.
And I'm not disagreeing with anything you said, I just want us to have the last word on which specific spot they use.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Since this is an item on the agenda, that members of the public are entitled to speak on it, I don't know if there's, do you have any speakership slips?
Not on this.
You might find out if there's anybody here who wants to speak.
Is there anyone here who would like to speak about this issue, which probably no one has heard about until now?
Yesterday at the LAFCO meeting, Supervisor Horsley also mentioned that he was, I can't remember whether he said he's going to show up tonight at the meeting or show up at a meeting to discuss this with us. So I think he's always been interested, you know, certainly in the last several years anyway, on working with the co-side as best as he can. So I'd like to continue that relationship.
Mr. President, is there a permit for this project? Has it already been issued? I mean, that's an opportunity for the district to have some input on location.
Well, it's our land at the end of the day, so.
Yeah, I don't know, I don't know where they are in the permitting process, frankly.
No MCC members here.
But again,
You know.
it's our land.
It's our land.
Yeah, you made the point, if you want
This
to have
land
the
is
final
your
say,
land.
we do.
Well, except that some of it is in fact Caltrans, but, you know, the configuration is probably not gonna meet their needs in terms of the shape. Because, you know, long skinny strip basically. So.
Well, yeah, and I want to know other things, like, are they going to fence it? You know, and, will we have 12 weeks of, you know, view blockage as you're
Right,
worried
they
about?
probably should fence it, which is why I want to meet with them on site and work out, you know, what their requirements are and what's acceptable to us. And I don't think that there's any other way that's gonna get the best result for the community.
Okay, well, rather than going to the ad hoc committee at this meeting, I'd like to invite the supervisor to our next meeting and to furnish us with some more details about what they're actually talking about.
Do you know what time frame they wanna actually start?
No.
Cause I have the feeling, you know, I'm not sure about this, but I have the feeling that they wanted to get it done before the worst of the winter storms might hit.
Well, if they
2
don't-
days
Don't
late
laugh
on
too
that.
hard, it might actually rain.
If they don't have coastal
Late
commission
November is a really bad time.
permits or anything, that's probably not going to happen.
I think they may be doing it under an emergency permit, which is fast track.
Matthew, one thing just is sort of related to that is one of the alternatives that have been discussed for, quote, parking for Surfers Beach and everything like that was to use the Caltrans area. if Caltrans is involved in this, and if they decide that it's feasible for them to stage equipment there, they may be willing, that's pretty much gonna destroy the area anyway over there. If in rebuilding it, if Caltrans is involved in these decisions, this would be a great time for them to put in, beach parking right there, right off the highway. I don't know if that should be mentioned, during any of these conversations,
I
but
like it.
if they're gonna dig it all up, then why not? If they're willing to put parking in there, that would alleviate the parking on all the destroyed sections right now, and it's a simple access right off the highway, they don't have to drive around and, try to come up where we are. I'd just like to mention that anyway.
For the equipment station that Matthew's talking about, they're not gonna be digging up anything on the inland side of the highway.
Well, just the
just gonna-
fact that they're bringing in
Yeah.
cranes and things is gonna destroy it. So if you're destroying it, you could just,
And
when
material.
you fix it up at the end, just turn it into parking at the end. Boom, you're done.
The other thing, if we're gonna punt this until Supervisor Rosa can be here, the other thing that I would like us to ask for is that in exchange for us letting them do it at no charge, the county gives us a break on CDP fees on our parks activities.
Well,
Last
when we
week,
go
did you
out,
take
when we go out on
negotiation
site
lessons or something?
to talk about this, why don't you just take him aside and see if to make your deal?
Go cut a deal.
I can do that.
And I want to be clear again, Supervisor Horsley offered to be at the meeting tonight. And I put that off because it was completely out of the blue and no one had heard about it. And I just wanted people to first know something about it before we had the supervisor here.
Well, if you think that our rescheduled December meeting is soon enough for the county, that sounds fine to me.
We'll see, I haven't gotten a response to that last email. So, if there is nothing else on that item, I am going to adjourn the special meeting.
Did we announce closed session? No. Got to announce our action at a closed
No
session.
reportable action was taken during closed session.
Thank you, counsel. All right, the special meeting is now adjourned, and we will call to order the regular meeting of the Granada Community Services District, and we'll start with the roll call.
President Matthew Clark,
I'm here.
Vice President Leonard Moore,
Present.
Secretary Jim Blanchard,
Here.
Treasurer David Seaton,
Here.
Director Rick Lum,
Here.
and at the table is General Manager Chuck Duffy and Legal Counsel Jonathan Whitwer, and I'm the Administrator Julia Canito.
All right, thank you. We will now start, as always, with general public participation, and I have a speaker slip from Bob Klein of El Granada, speaking on a subject not on the agenda. The subject is plan.
Well, good evening, all. Thank you for having me. I was out over the weekend driving in the country, cruising along about 40 miles an hour, and I looked outside my car and there was a chicken running alongside of me at 40 miles an hour. Wow, can't imagine anything happening like that. And all of a sudden it sped up, went out in front of me, turned right in a road, and I thought, I probably ought to follow that thing and see what's going on. So I went out and I followed it, and as it turned, it appeared like the chicken had 3 legs. So I followed it, went up, and there was a farm there, and the chicken rode off, and ran off, and the farmer had some other chickens. I said, did you see that chicken come through here? And the farmer said, yeah, I did. He said, it looked to me like it had 3 legs. He says, yeah, I raise them that way. I said, well, why do you raise them that way? He said, well, Ma and I always loved chicken legs. So when we roast that chicken, I want to have a chicken leg, Ma wants to have a chicken. Junior came along, and rather than fight over these 2 chicken legs, I started raising chickens with 3 legs. And so I said, well, that's pretty amazing. How's that 3rd chicken leg taste? He said, I don't know, we haven't caught one yet. It's okay. I kind of feel a little bit like that farmer from the fact that as a Granada Parks member, I worked hard to get the GSD to become a GCSD. And like that farmer, I can't get a grip right now on what's going on with the GCSD. And so my topic basically is there a written plan that you folks have someplace, a strategic plan on how to approach what you want to do? If there is, when are the ratepayers going to see it? If there isn't, my suggestion would be to have a working committee, maybe board members here and people from the community, work together to get this plan implemented and out to the public so we know what the heck's going on, or we end up just like that farmer not being able to taste that chicken leg because we can't catch it. Are you with me? Okay? Thanks very much.
Yes.
Let me say that I share some of your frustration on the apparent lack of forward motion. I wonder if we should move up that one bullet item from the general manager's report.
Let's ask the general manager how he feels
Do
about
I
that.
point out now that we've only been a CSD for a meeting?
This
Or
is
no,
my
later
comment.
on?
For a meeting,
I know we've been working on it for a decade, but it's only been legal like 6
I'll
weeks.
point out that we generally keep people to 3 minutes, but, you know, that was the best shaggy chicken story.
That was more than 3 minutes.
Chuck, shall we reorder? Do you want
Sure.
to take that on now? And we'll reorder to item number 12, which is the general manager's report on meeting with the county parks department to discuss Mid-Coast Action Plan. And the short answer to your question is that we adopted as part of the LAFCO conditions to become a CSD, the county parks action plan for the coast. And so that is the written document that we have
As our initial.
as our basis, yes.
It's the initial guiding document. is the one.
Which means
Yes.
this board can discuss it and amend it.
Before we leave general public participation though, Leonard, would you like to?
Yeah, I have something which probably doesn't fit anywhere else on the agenda.
Can I make one final comment?
Can you do it by the microphone?
Sure can.
Might want to tilt the microphone a little because they're fairly directional.
I think what we're looking for are dates or target dates when things should happen or could happen, whether it's having the community in. The last time that happened, it wasn't as successful as you would have liked it. Community outreach programs here and here, something that the ratepayers could get in their calendar so it's not a surprise deal and they have knowledge about it and can come in and participate with you. Those types of things. That's kind of what I'm looking for.
Do you have a feel for whether we should try and do some of it on weekend days rather than Thursday nights?
Well, we've been kicking around some ideas, and I think weekend deals might be good. We were kind of kicking around an idea perhaps where maps of the strip and maps of the proposed lot over there could be produced with a legend on it that people could actually read without having to get out a microscope and look at it. I was a cartographer in the Air Force, and I can't read most of that stuff that you see. Something that they could have in their hands, or maybe you could mail out. We've been kicking around some other ideas as well, so should you want to take part of some of those, we'd be happy to come back and share those with you. Okay?
That's a great idea.
Yes. And I'll comment that the first item on our regular agenda is a discussion of establishing a social media presence, and at least in my concept of that, a main purpose would be to provide another avenue for the community to get involved and have input through social media. And so, anyway, Chuck, would you like to talk about your meeting with the county?
Under public comment,
Well,
I,
for continuity, would you like to come back to that?
yeah, we can if you want. Chuck's the one
Okay.
that said,
All right.
but I think it actually makes more sense to
Keep going.
continue the public comment to after the general manager's report.
All right, so we'll jump to item 12, general manager report, and report on my meeting with the county parks department. So yesterday I met with Marlene Finley and Sam Hertzberg from county parks, and we discussed exactly what Mr. Klein brought up. Of what kind of plan are we gonna put into place, what's our action plan, what do we wanna see, and things like that. And what we talked about a whole range of things. We scratched a few things down here. We talked about partnering with the county, whether it be with Quarry Park or Murata Surf or things like that. Discussions with the city of Half Moon Bay, which we have to start with their parks and recreation people. Things we could do on the Granada Boulevard. So all the stuff that's in the Midcoast Action Plan. And we reviewed that and went through it. And what I've asked them to help us with is putting together a plan of public outreach and also concrete projects that the board can look at after we get the public input to kind of develop our plan of action going forward. So we discussed sending out a newsletter, because at this point in time, while the newsletter sounds kind of old-fashioned, it hits everybody in the district, and I think it does two things. One, it says, yeah, we went through this vote, you voted us into a CSD, we've got Parks and Recs power, you know, here's suggestions. Then we could put on our website a survey page. Said if you want to go to this site, they could go, the county suggested we use Survey Monkeys,
Yep.
send stuff around.
I would have
They talked
suggested
about utilizing Nextdoor as an interaction thing. So, you know, even what David was talking about with Facebook and Twitter and things like that. So we discussed putting that together. So they're gonna draft a newsletter and get input from us, and they're gonna kind of shape it. They'll send it to me, you know, I'll send it out to everybody, we'll get some input there. And that's kind of what we're looking at. So we're looking at getting that public input. I've read through all the action plan again, which I've done 5 or 6 times, and, you know, all the other things. There's some broad stuff that comes up. People are interested in the community center, they're interested in developing these medians, and they're interested in some passive open space and things like that. So that's kind of the plan we're looking at, and we're leaning on them as our expertise to help us develop that, so.
Could you elaborate a little bit on, you'd mentioned to me on the phone, you know, because I've been telling people that, you know, regarding that property acquisition, that, you know, we need our office space and meeting room immediately, and meeting room, or the community center is some years down the road after we find out what the community really wants, and, you know, do they want it and how big, and you had something to say about that.
Well, we pushed and part of the reason, when reading through the task force, community center came up very strongly. A lot of people want that. I guess there's a real pressing need here. The facilities in Half Moon Bay are overbooked a lot because there's not enough room there and whatnot. So, you know, we keep saying that the community center down the road. Well, you know, down the road doesn't have to be 10 years. Down the road can be 5 years, because we'll be collecting money from now till then, and, you know, we'll have substantial funds if your board so allocates.
And what I've typically said to people is 5 to 10 years, so 5 is still within range of what
And
I've
we
been
can start,
telling you.
yeah, and if that's what your board wants, and that's the input we get from the community, that's what they want, I think we can make it a priority. And
Well, you know, regarding the community center, I want whatever the community wants. You know, if the community doesn't want it, then it's not gonna happen.
yeah, and I think we've got to do the newsletter, because it's real now. We are a CSD, we've got the powers, and we can have the discussion now that people have been wanting us to have for the past 3 or 4 years. And when I look at you know, they held the workshops, the first workshop, and this is back in whenever they held the workshops in 2005. You know, they had 75 people the first time, and 25 people the second time, and 18 people the third time. And so they rank these things, but it's based on 18 people in El Granada, which isn't as large a thing as a newsletter would be. And maybe people will be more apt to go to a website, because it's easy, because it's right there, and they can put their input there, which really wasn't happening 10 or 12 years ago. So I think that's a good starting plan, and that'll allow us to get as much broad-based public opinion as we can.
I think we definitely need to do that, for two reasons. One, the other one was mid-coast wide and not just, within
Right,
this
good
district
point.
boundaries. And the other is, that last plan, in fact, the Mid-Coast Parks and Rec Action Plan itself, which is our initial guiding document, was, trying to figure out the politic way of saying this. Basically, it was distorted, because, one of the leaders' personal feeling is that, there's enough land already, owned, which obviously there isn't. And so he summarily tossed, and Fran can actually back this up, he summarily tossed the top 3 items that came out in the '89 survey and the '95 survey.
And those are 25 years old.
Right, but the same 3 things topped all 3 surveys over that period of like 15 years, but he didn't agree with it, so he summarily tossed them and started with 4. But we need to go back to the beginning and resurvey just our constituents and see what our constituents really want.
Absolutely.
Chuck, can we, I love the Survey Monkey thing. You know, I think that should be a major piece, and if you can set Chris Johnson brought that list in,
Yeah,
that he
I got
had
that.
compiled, and a couple things, there's 25 things. Some of them read, I like Grassy Hill, we could do that real fast out here. If we're sending a newsletter out, can it somehow include essentially a survey or something where we could list 20 things and have people, check whichever ones you like, blah, 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 and then rank your top 3. And then something that people, they could take the newsletter and refold it and hand it in to us, because there are a lot of people who don't want to play on computers.
Yeah.
That would be
absolutely.
like one phase of getting it in, then 2, we have a Survey Monkey, and 3, we have a Saturday meeting, and then combine all of these thoughts.
And 4, we could have it on the website, so they want to fill it on the website. Right, so yeah,
Right, so
I think we can explore all avenues.
I would do those 4 things as fast as we possibly
Well,
can.
I would suggest that as much as we have on our website would be an explanation with a link to the survey on SurveyMonkey, because there's no way that we can develop the survey technology as well as they already have it.
All right.
That's fine.
So, Rick, a slight modification to what you outlined, when you said, what are the 20 things you want, and what are the top 3? I think that needs to be broken down in terms of, what are the couple things you want to see done right away, what are the couple things you want to see done in the intermediate future?
That's
what
why
are
I said, we would list 20 things and just get them to check them, and then, have a block where you'd write in 1, 2, and 3 or something.
It's exactly what they did with the old needs assessment. They had
Yeah.
those 20 things listed, and you prioritized them 1 through 10.
Absolutely, next
Right.
year, we want to see the following 3 things happen.
Right.
Boone, fix up the Burnham Strip, fitness center, fitness loop, whatever, fix the median strips. And, just, if we can get a consensus from the groups at these meetings, what the top 3 or 4 are, and so we can launch some. So I think everybody wants us to do something. I want to do something.
On the other hand, there's one thing that I think probably has broad support, and I'd like to somehow get this moving, without waiting 6 months for surveys and stuff, and that is improvement of part of the Burnham Strip property that we own, basically at the foot of Avenue Portola. I think an awful lot of people would like to see us put in some benches and, a table or 2, and
That's
it seems
fine,
to
yeah.
me that's an easy win that will get really broad support, and, let's get it moving already.
Yeah, it's simple little
It's
stuff
been
there
30
just do.
days.
Yeah, but we haven't even had it on the agenda to consider it.
It's our first meeting since we were,
So we're kind of having a discussion here on a public comment session, so
No,
whatever
this-
you can do, and then put it on the agenda next week, so we can
No,
talk about it.
we skipped to item
No,
12, and we're
this
gonna
is-
go back to public
it's-
comment.
It's item 12, so
Okay, never mind.
I had that listed.
And I think the most important part, I think even in terms of what you can do leading up to any type of meetings we have, which I think are gonna be, I think these types of meetings are kind of inefficient in terms of getting real community, back and forth. I think you need to put people around the table or in a workshop setting where ideas could kind of get filtered out. But ultimately, I think it comes down to, budgets in terms of, short, mid, and long-range things going into the workshops. People could have all types of ideas, but, realistically, what type of budget, even coming out of any type of meeting, can we set and say, okay, regardless of what happens, this is, during this first series of meetings, this is gonna be the budget that we have comfortably to set aside for these types of expenditures. And then, obviously, other long-range types of things are gonna be, they're gonna be a little bit more ambiguous in terms of, what gets done over the years and as boards change and everything else like that.
Okay.
I think people are gonna be really surprised when they see how much even the simplest things cost. Yeah, especially when you have to have permits.
Well, that's why we can't spend half of our budget on CDPs.
Right. Yeah, but I imagine
Moving
on
on.
tables and benches, in a view corridor.
Well, that's what we talked about with the county, and I don't know why we keep fixating on the CDP, because it's only $3,000 or $4,000.
Yeah, only $3,000 or $4,000.
If you're
Yeah, if we're
gonna be spending $250,000 a year on projects, but, so we talked about bundling, if we're gonna do a bunch of smaller projects, whether it be on the Burnham Strip or up on the boulevards, bundle them into one project, so we're not paying $4,000 times 10, so we talked about that. Yeah.
good.
So they're gonna draft a newsletter, send the county parks, send it to me, talk about the avenues we're gonna use to get it out there, and I'll send it all to you, and you can give me your comments, we can get going.
Are you envisioning a single topic newsletter? Do we have any other things that have been
Single topic.
hanging around forever?
Nope, single topic. Because it's important enough to be a single topic, and I don't want it to get lost with 5 other articles.
Take the
So,
sticky labels
Parks,
off your
parks,
fridge.
parks, right.
can I suggest that you put on there some hybrid of a map and an aerial photo outlining the district-owned property? Because a lot of people don't necessarily know exactly where it is, and, make sure the property line is accurate, and separately tag the Caltrans-owned
Yeah.
area.
Well, the point that Mr. Klein made about readability,
I would almost prefer we leave the maps to the website, because you can do really nice maps on a website, and trying to get them into a flyer is, you're gonna be back to the same little drawings that are about this
Well,
big. and-
Yeah, I
It
can
wastes
see what
space,
it
too.
looks, you all are gonna see the newsletter before
Yeah.
we send it out, so.
We wanna do the survey in the newsletter,
Right.
not a bunch of maps
But
that
if-
takes the whole thing up.
Well, but it depends on whether we do an 8.5 by 11 or a ledger sheet, because if it's a ledger sheet, there's plenty of room to have one whole 8.5 by 11 side be the map.
Well, we'll see how it lays out, best I can tell you. Okay?
anything else? Okay, that was item 12. Now we'll go back to general public participation.
Okay, well, we all got our Prop 218 notices on the garbage collection rate increase, and I had to wait some amount of time until MWSD's agenda packet materials were available, and I looked at theirs, and I looked at ours, and I said, something's wrong with this picture, because they were getting something like a 1.5% increase effective January, and if I remember right, I didn't see anything that actually says what our percent is,
Well, and-
but I think our percent was like many times that. So I called up Chris Porter, the local area manager for Recology, the manager for this unit of Recology, and said, no dice. Why are our rate's so much higher than Montera's when we signed the contract earlier and we didn't get the garbage bins, and they signed theirs later and they got the garbage bins. And to leave out most of the picky detail back and forth between us, she ended up agreeing to take it to her management in the interest of fairness, because I said this is just not fair. And so she took it to her management, and they approved changing our proposed new rates effective January to be the same as Montera's. And so what they had been proposing for 20-gallon service was $18.75. It's now going to be $16.15. The 32-gallon service, which is what most people have, was proposed for $23.53, and it's going to be $19.91. So $3.50 less a month for a couple thousand households. And the 64-gallon service, which households really, really shouldn't have, was proposed for $76.08, and that will be $65.25. So,
And as I said to
Yeah.
Director Warren, good job. Just saved all your ratepayers' money.
but somebody, I'm gonna have to talk to Chris one more time, she didn't get the font size memo. Bob can't read this, I can barely read it. This is really terrible.
With a smaller font, it's less pages and less waste to throw away in the garbage.
There's all this white space down here.
Let's move on.
So, as Chris pointed out, we don't need to do a new Prop 218 notice because these rates are lower than what was noticed. So, I think we're in good shape here.
I think so too.
And she, in her cover email, suggests to Delia to forward any protest letters or phone calls to her, and she'll handle them.
Which is what we've been doing.
Well, thank you. Any other topics not on the agenda? All right.
Oh, do you want to mention the fact that the 218 hearing is scheduled for December 11th, when our regular meeting would normally be the following week, December 18th, and so the way I understand the calendar markup, we're not going to have the regular meeting on December 18th because we're having a meeting to handle the 218 hearing.
Consider it mentioned, thank you. Yes, we moved up the December meeting, and it was largely for the Prop 218 calendar.
Oh, and so what Chris told me on the phone is that she was waiting for the contract to be signed, and so it's still not clear to me whether she was gonna go ahead and place the order or not. She really, really doesn't wanna order the garbage carts until the contract is approved, which would be at the December meeting. But if she goes ahead and does that, she's expecting those to be delivered to our customers before Thanksgiving. So that might happen, I don't know. I'll try and find out and make sure she can comment on that more clearly. Well, actually, December 11th, they may have already arrived. Yeah, how are we gonna do that? Social media.
Well, considering Thanksgiving is in a week, I don't think that,
That's
Yeah.
the third thing that's not gonna keep me awake tonight.
Okay, so I guess, since I haven't heard from her, I guess they're not going to arrive before Thanksgiving. But almost certainly they will arrive before January because the new rate sheet says effective January 1st.
well, let's hope. Yeah, and let's make noise if they don't. All right, let's move to item 1 on the regular agenda, consideration of establishing district social media accounts. And I think we tasked staff, Delia, with doing some research on this. Did we?
Yes, we tasked to do some research on
Social media?
We just looked at the one that was set up already.
well, the Facebook one. I thought we pushed this off until after we became a CSD.
which is now.
Right, that's why we have it on the agenda.
But the agenda says this item was placed on the agenda at the request of Director Seaton.
Right.
Yes, from that meeting.
From that
2 meetings
meeting.
ago.
Now,
So
there's one thing that we can say is, Delia said she did get subscribed to Nextdoor, because I had sent her an invite a while back, and we don't quite know what happened with that.
Yeah, I did get logged on, and I noticed it seems to be, well-read, so that might be a good forum for putting on agendas.
Yeah, the number of people signed up to the El Granada section of Nextdoor is, all we know is between 200 and 250 people, because at every 50 it says, invite more people so we can get to this next
250.
mark.
And I'll note that I did put up on Nextdoor the previous meeting and this meeting. And the previous time I just did the El Granada neighborhood, and then I thought about it and decided, well, there are people elsewhere who are interested in this.
There's the Miramar list.
But I-
We go for
So-
quality, not quantity in our membership.
Are you not, you're not on the El Granada list?
I might be on both for all I know.
But I
no,
thought when you
I'm on
join one
Miramar.
of these, you also see the postings for all the ones from Half Moon Bay through Monterey, even though you can only post to the one you're part of.
It depends what settings. So when you post it, you could go El Granada, or it gives you the option to the surrounding neighborhoods.
Oh, you can post to more than your own
Yeah,
neighborhood?
you could post to your so like in our case, we can only post to Montera through Half Moon Bay. You can't post to San Mateo. But the best advice would be, why not widen it as big as possible and post to all surrounding neighborhoods?
And I think if you don't designate, it goes to the whole thing.
Yeah,
Right.
so.
And the county's posting. I've seen several things in the county, the
It's
meetings
true.
and stuff.
The town is posting.
I think that's great. Are we asking for input, or,
Well,
I thought I want to do Facebook as soon as we can, that's no problem.
Okay,
So I'd like to either move that we authorize Delia or somebody to get up to Facebook, and then we can talk about content and who edits it.
well, I think what'll happen.
I have no problem
if
getting
your board
Facebook up.
directs us to go on to Facebook, we'll do a Facebook page, and it'll be like the website, you know, these things aren't static, so we'll do a page, y'all can look at it, say, I like this, I like that, add this, add that, and we can do it that way. Is that-
Say go.
What about Twitter?
Time waster.
Yeah.
I just don't think the stuff we do is tweetable.
I guess the key
I mean,
would be
you could-
that start and, you know, and make sure we're using it, because so many people start Twitter accounts, they don't never even use it. So I think with Facebook, the main benefit, which even communities have asked for, is with public documents and stuff, it's so much easier to add it. Once we create a Facebook page, there's a section that says files, and it takes 5 seconds to upload a
But
document.
we can
Right.
do all that stuff on the website we have.
But it's more accessible, more people are gonna be on Facebook than are gonna be
Well, it's
checking our
just-
website.
We already have the document, it takes 2 seconds.
Yeah, and so in that sense, I think it's, you know, that's an efficient tool, I think. And then when we get into things like Bob talked about, once we're on Facebook, we could create a group, you know, you could create, you know, groups for discussions like this, where we could create a 6-month, you know, for 6 months to talk about parks and recs ideas. And that would be a group that more people could join, and so it just gives another tool for communication, I think, in terms of.
Okay.
Yeah, I think in terms of, you
And
know,
just-
reaching out to the public and taking their input.
All right, so we'll get a page and start that up, and like I said, once it's up, we'll let everybody know.
There
You can
may
take a look.
already be a GSD page that somebody else created, and if there is,
It's a
Yes.
GSD.
We'll create
Um,
something new.
Yeah, that's probably when it picks up if
It
somebody inputs something, then it will pick it up and save that location.
well.
Yeah.
But we
if-
should create our own.
If I recall, that had the address and phone number of the Naples Beach pump station.
Yeah.
It did, but that was automatically generated, and we're GCSD now.
Yeah.
So
It's gonna be a
can
different
can
page.
you work on making that page go away then?
We are. Yeah, they changed their format. You used to be able to take control of it, and they changed something now, so it's more difficult, but we can do that. And just so everyone knows, we ordered Adobe Acrobat, which is the program we're gonna use to put our agendas on the website, so that's in the works now.
So they'll be real electronic and not scanned.
There'll be there'll be a PDF not scanned, just straight from Word to PDF.
And could you train the Harbor District staff?
No.
That was sarcasm,
I know.
if you watch The Big Bang Theory.
So,
That's good.
we'll get up and going on Facebook and.
Do we need a motion or?
But can
Direct.
we see it first before you publicize it?
See the,
Can you tell us it's there before you send out a bigger?
We'll see if I can do that.
Or, you know,
No.
even if you open it up and you just tell us.
I mean,
that
I guess the most simplest thing, when you create the Facebook page, we would create it under, gives you 6 options, we would choose, you know, there's one for municipalities. And then at that point, you enter in the contact information and it's a blank page, you know.
Okay.
It's so simple to make changes, and we could add a photo and we could do,
Yeah.
so I guess Leonard's point would be, it's a 3-step process for who are you, what are you, contact information. And then I guess Leonard could view it, we could view it, and then before we start inviting people and doing things like that.
Okay.
You know, but, you know, I think at the most basic level, within 25 seconds, we'll have a Facebook page up.
Okay.
It will just be blank, and it's up to us to start adding files or pictures or
Well,
whatever.
You know, one of the things that we need to decide on is who's gonna be able to add stuff to it, and I think the only obvious appropriate answer is the district staff.
Yeah, have deal, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, it's just like the website.
All right, so
if
just,
you
you
guys
know,
wanna
do
add
it and
something,
then
you
let's
just
get
email
feedback
us
on
and
it.
we add it on.
Because, you know, the district staff speaks at the board's direction, whereas, you know, if directors had access to it, they're not necessarily gonna be speaking for the whole board.
All right,
Right.
so we've got our marching orders, we'll get that up and going.
So you don't need a motion on that?
No.
Okay, good. Item number 2, consideration of resolution to designate authorities to execute California State Lands Commission application for abandonment of easement at Pillar Point Harbor.
Easy for you to say.
Did
Uh,
take this one?
This was,
Okay.
silly.
Well, I was notified by letter from the State Lands Commission
A few years ago.
a few years back. Yeah, their staff keeps leaving, and so then it gets, you know, it drops off. And then, you know, a year later, I get contacted again from somebody else. Apparently, there was a lease that was signed back in 1960 for the submersed land where the outfall was for the original treatment plant for Granada. That's right out there in Pillar Point. It's actually underwater, so it's a small section. It is on the map that's provided there. And the lease has expired, and I guess the board here probably should have addressed it at the time they went online with the new treatment plant, and our treatment plant was no longer using the outfall. That didn't take place, and I have really very little history on it, but I don't think anything really came of it, and so now they're asking us to basically terminate the lease or to officially abandon the lease.
For those who don't know, not too long after the district was formed, they built a primary-only treatment plant on a 10,000 square foot parcel that's off of the, how do I describe it? It's off of the southeast corner of Pillar Ridge.
Yeah, it's right on.
And in fact, the district retains an easement to that property over the edge of the Big Wave property. So when the SAM plant came online in something like '83,
Yeah.
this district had the old sewer plant demolished. And at that point, we didn't need the outfall anymore in
Right, it
1983.
was all routed to Half Moon Bay.
Hmm?
The outfall, was routed to Half Moon
Right.
Bay, so.
So the one question I would have for Chuck is, people elsewhere on the coast side have suggested that with changes in technology, there's some possibility that it might make more sense, instead of maintaining the IPS, which is kind of a big deal, to have, to go back to the old model of separate sewer treatment plants, Now, I've kind of batted that around with you in past years, and you scoffed at it. So do you want to
I
go
don't
on the
think I
record?
necessarily scoffed at it, because that's kind of the newer thinking of not having these big, long pipelines
it
to a
is.
central, yeah.
So
It's
the
been that
question-
way for the past 10 years. I scoffed it. You talked about what we would call a stripping plant.
Well, no, that was a completely separate discussion. But is there any reasonable potential for us to go back to having our own treatment plant here and maybe needing the outfall? And then can we even get a permit to discharge at that location at this point?
Well, that's more of the interesting discussion. Can you get a new outfall permit? You know, a lot of these things were done 30 years ago, and it was a lot easier back then. The only reason you'd even consider doing a plant here is if you had a recycled water, a large recycled water use here. Because other than that, you know, you're not gonna go and, build a, what are we, at 600,000 gallons a day, something like that.
Well, we'd need to size it for
Right.
probably up to 1 million.
Right, so you build a 1 million gallon a day treatment plant, and that would cost you $8 million, so that's tough to pencil.
So yeah, if there's no way that that's ever gonna pencil out, then, let's
Yeah.
go ahead and abandon this right away.
Okay.
But, I
opposed
wanted
to
to make
renewing.
sure that there's no chance that we're ever gonna be interested in this again.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't see some foreseeable future.
Okay?
So the purpose of this item on the agenda is simply to authorize a signer to, I've actually completed the application, it's ready to be sent in. They just need a resolution showing someone authorized to sign that application so we can submit it.
So we need a motion.
I move approval of resolution next in order, a resolution designating authorities to execute California State Lands Commission, you're gonna correct the spelling of commission, application and other documents necessary to abandon easement at Pillar Point Harbor.
I second it.
So please correct commission before you send it to
Oh,
them.
of course, yeah.
Spell out California, too.
Yeah, yeah.
And spell out California.
And I second it with those suggested corrections.
All right, I don't think we need any more discussion. Anything else to say? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0.
Obviously, somebody at SAM still can't read the font size memo.
Item 3, font size memo. No, item 3, consideration of Sewer Authority Mid-Coastside guiding principles for recycled water project. Would one of the SAM reps like to?
Well, the SAM has a committee of one from Granada, one from Montero, one from Half Moon Bay, and Rick is the one from Granada, so he has to report on this.
I can do that. First of all, I want to say that we voted as a committee specifically for this font size, knowing that it would irritate them.
So you
That
got
was a
my
whole
memo.
meeting, then we went out and had a beer, so it was great.
Do not exceed 12 point.
Just the brief history on, we've had a committee rolling for a couple months, about 3 months now, I guess. The idea was to lay down some basic principles that everybody could agree to. The idea was to move beyond any of the political shenanigans and stuff that was going on last time we tried this. A lot of the parties have now moved on and aren't on the different agencies now. So we took a lot of we had several versions of this in the past. We took them and a couple people wrote different versions up. One of them got extremely legal and we decided to take all the legalese out, no offense, Jonathan. And tried to update it, we tried to keep it simple, we tried to keep it very straightforward. The idea of this document is that if all the agencies agree to this, then we can just move forward with the project. There were some things we added to this. We wanted to ensure that everybody knows that this is not a recycled project just to make water for the golf course. That's gonna be the first phase, it's gonna go in with the pipelines there, it's a natural win, but we want to make sure in the verbiage that everybody knows that's phase one, and that we aren't excluding us northern folks in Montero water and everything like that. So we got Montero in, just as we have CCWD in, has 2 water agencies, both of which will be actually selling the water to the customers. So that was kind of the biggest thing we did. I don't think there's anything, massively controversial in here. My recommendation would be to move forward with this, because the next steps are gonna be review. We have, reports that stack up literally this big on my, dresser at home. Not my dresser, but my, downstairs table that irritate my wife all the time. And I'd like to solve that domestic problem by moving this on so I can move those projects off my desk. And
You don't have a scanner?
because what we want to do is just update the documents to make sure we're still sizing it correctly, briefly checking newer technologies, and get some initial, at least generic bids out so we can size the project. Is it 7 million? Is it grown to 10 million? Is it dropped to 6 million? Because a huge number of grants have become available, including, I think, Prop 1, I think provides money also maybe for recycled water, but now is the time. If we stall around for another year, the money's gonna be gone. So we wanna get these principles approved and back to Sam, so to see if there are any other comments, come up with a final document, hopefully at the next meeting, and then launch the real project, which is updating our reports, volumes, and getting the bids in, because we can't go out for grants until we know what it costs. So that's what this is. Eventually, we hope that all the agencies would sign on the back. We wanted to keep it simple. We didn't want to bring in zoning issues and things like that. We just wanted to make sure that everybody understand who does what, and what phase 1 is, and then they're going to move on to phase 2. If you have any questions, I can answer specific questions.
Well, I have 2 concerns that I want to ask our staff to address. One is this framework, and this is not actually an agreement, this is like
Yeah, I'd like, before you go,
agreeing on the shape of the table for the peace talks.
I wanted just to elaborate that, this is not an agreement. This is not a contract. It's nothing other than principles. This is the starting point. Once this is in place and everything else comes up, then we will have, the big contracts will be written, because it has to be written between, and that's gonna take a while, but we need to get this part going so we can get bids, quotes, sizing, and get that part going.
So, my concern, and I'm gonna assume that General Counsel and General Manager have gone over this carefully, does this approach guarantee that at some point, not necessarily day one, but at some point, that all of the money that's fronted by the sewer ratepayers will be recouped from the water charges?
The sale of recycled water?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and let me give a little background, and I don't know even how much, I've talked to you two about this. So I think I saw version 5 of this agreement.
And let's note for the people who don't have this in front of them, this is version 7.
Right. So I saw version 5 of this agreement, and it worried me a little bit because it had a lot of detail, and it talked about this as an agreement. So the version in the SAM packet had my markups in it.
So it's version 6.
Version 6. So, and what I tried to do is take anything out that bound us to that kind of thing, because that big agreement still has to be written. So, and the real issue is going to be, it's always the money.
Mm-hmm.
The real issue is going to, I'm in the middle of negotiating 2 recycled water agreements down south, is, if we upfront the money, we need to have a payback period. If CCWD upfronts the money, they need to have a payback. It has to work for everybody, because we're not going to go there and lose money on this to subsidize selling water to a golf course. So that's where the real, the real talk comes in.
So you think this framework will allow us to make sure that the sewer ratepayers don't end up in the hole for any of the RW project costs at some point down the road? Obviously, there'll be
Yeah,
a
these are
payback
guiding, like
period.
Rick points out, these are guiding principles, and that's what we want. We're all on board with this thing, we all wanna move forward and get recycled water to the coast side. Here's the guiding principles, now let's start looking at pricing of this thing, and who's gonna upfront the money, can we get grant funding, that kind of stuff.
Well, actually, I said I had 2 issues. I actually have 2.5, so that was one of them. The other thing, which is sort of more than one issue, is, I got shot down by Scott for even bringing this up with the SAM board, but I really think that one way or another there needs to be a restriction that CCWD cannot use the freed up water to facilitate more development, which is exactly what they want to do and why they wanted to be in control of the whole project when this started a few years ago. The other side of that particular coin is my primary interest in doing recycled water is to restore the health of the streams, which have been drained dry by excessive use, withdrawing more water from the streams, notably Pillarcitos, than it can support, and also too many wells next to Pillarcitos, which also dry out the creek. And most people don't understand that, but it's pretty well provable. So what I don't see in here at all is any requirement that diversion and extraction be reduced to let the health of the stream improve. And in particular, the lagoon that used to be behind the SAM plant, which went away in 1980, I want to see that lagoon come back. And for that lagoon to come back, there needs to be significantly reduced diversion and extraction from Pillarcitos Creek.
Who's diverting and who's extracting and?
If I can just jump in on that real quick. The agreement will be, it's not in this agreement, this principles, the agreement will be they will turn the wells off. They will not give up the wells.
The golf course will turn
The golf
the
course
wells
will turn off all, because the golf course is one that has the wells right along the creek that aren't dragging the creek down. But those wells will be turned off as part of the agreement. They have no problem with that.
I thought one of the sticking points when we started this a few years ago was that CCWD wanted to take over those wells,
They
and
did,
OCP
and
said that's not going to happen.
That wasn't an issue at the last meeting. It was, when CCWD was there, they withdrew that, and they know
So
that's not gonna
So
happen.
OCP has prevailed on
Yeah,
that.
it's pretty clear.
So that will help restore the creek, but CCWD also has a well field up, I believe, around Santa's Christmas tree farm, but I'm really unclear on where it is. Do you happen to know?
No, I thought it was higher up.
It very well could be higher up. CCWD has well fields in multiple places, and at least one of those well fields does drain Pillarcitos Creek.
Those, I can probably tell you, those aren't gonna be in the agreement. The only thing that'll be in the agreement is those immediate wells where they're sucking it directly to the golf course, so.
So you're saying that the agreement isn't gonna provide for reduced extraction and diversion other than shutting down those wells?
Just like limiting them to, they can't build any more houses, those will not be in the final agreements, because that's a coastal commission issue. The coastal commission has said you can make X number of connections right now. They have a fixed number. And they would have to go back to the coastal commission in an entire new process to say, oh, we discovered all this water floating around all of a sudden. Now you have to give us more permits. And we can't stop that process, but I don't think it has, any chance of getting to the coastal commission or anything like that. And we want to use, and the studies will show whether it's feasible or not, to either restore a lagoon, to restore wetlands, recharge the aquifer. Those are all things lots of people are doing. And those are all things we would like to do. It just depends on cost. And, you know, what we can do with the water, because the demand from the golf course is very seasonal and very peaked. So we're gonna have a lot of, and they're talking everything from trucking water, you know, to all these other uses are being discussed, but those will all be in final agreements. What we're doing, there's tons, I mean, these are all winning situations, and any of them we can do will make us better out here, so.
Well, the key is, yeah, you're pumping.
key is to get the plant-
1.5 million gallons of water a day into the ocean, and getting no benefit from it, so whatever you can do to get benefit from it.
Well, let me connect a couple dots. You know, I mentioned the lagoon disappearing in 1980, and we've mentioned the ocean colony wells that are next to Pilarcitos Creek on the, essentially on the south side of the road leading to the sewer plant. And those wells were installed in 1980, and the lagoon disappeared in 1980. Smoking gun. Even though they insist that it doesn't lower the level of the creek, it does, and it's provable, and there's data that does prove it.
Yep.
But another aspect of it, why I'm kind of harping on this, is CCWD has over-permitted. If all of the people who own the right to hook up, but haven't yet, go in and develop and exercise the right to hook up, and all of the unsold priority permits get sold, we're gonna have mandatory rationing at probably the 30% level. And during drought years like we're in right now, it's gonna be 50 or 60%, because CCWD is so overcommitted. And that's why I'm making such a big deal out of this has to not allow them to create any more connections. They have to serve better the connections that they have now. And the freed up potable water has to basically be held so that in dry years, we don't have mandatory severe rationing. So, you know, I still have serious reservations
Well,
about this.
Yeah, but this is a guiding principle document, it's not the final agreement, so if you, I suggest you bring up those issues when they go to sign that final agreement.
Okay. Now, can Jonathan explain why we need a comma after CCWD in the title where there isn't currently one? Or do I have to do it?
Why don't you do it?
Well, the way I heard it explained is some guy wrote a will and he left his estate to be divided equally among his children, A, comma, B, and C. And the court said, oh, A gets 50% and B and C get 25% each. Because he left out the comma.
Very possible.
Thank you.
Do you need a motion on this? I'd be happy to, since I had to go to all the stupid committee meetings. I move that we adopt these guiding principles for the recycled water project.
Yeah, authorize the general manager and board president to sign.
That's what I said. All
Do
that.
we have a second?
I think, I don't think you'll sign this one. I think it'll, has to
Yeah,
go,
well,
has to go
I'll
back
wait.
to Sam,
Right.
because there might be tweaked again.
Right.
So to sign the final,
Right,
unless there are major changes or something like
yeah,
that.
and I'll just wait till Sam circulates it. Anyone second?
Not yet.
Don't look at me, you're gonna be
I'll-
lucky
I'll
that I even
second- I'll
vote for
second
it.
it.
Pardon?
I'll second this.
All right, any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 If there's any nays? Thank you.
And actually, to Director Warren's point about that, actually, I think what should be changed is the word between. This is actually among SAM, CCWD,
For sure.
and MWS.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
this is kind of.
Yeah, good. So just get them to change the title.
I'll work on that.
All right, more Sam. Item 4, consideration of report and ongoing issues by district's sewer authority Midcoast side representatives. Must be your turn, Director Warren.
Oh, I'm so bad at meeting reports. Since, due to the election results in Half Moon Bay, the last SAM meeting was Alan Alfano's last SAM meeting, and so at the end of the meeting, there was sort of this love fest of how well the boards worked together in the last couple of years, particularly compared to the 8 years before he was on the board, before he and Rick Kowalczyk were on the board. And,
Do you want to jump back to the October meeting real quick? We have 2 meetings to cover. If you want to, that's
we do?
real.
Okay, well, you do better meeting reports, so I'll just jump in on things that I think you've left out.
Okay. Oh, well,
So why don't you do both meeting reports?
got my glasses on, yeah. I think one interesting thing that popped up in both of the 2 meetings is that, if you folks remember, last year roughly, we became extremely irate when our portion of the sewer plant flow kept going up and up and up. So therefore, we kept paying higher and higher percents to the tune of lots and lots of money. After all of us screaming for literally years, they discovered some problems in the flow meters and they corrected it, and things settled down for a while. So in the last couple months, interestingly enough, Half Moon Bay's numbers have now started to climb and ours are going down. So now it's an emergency, as they said, and they pulled it off each agenda and we keep checking, so.
Okay, but that was said tongue in cheek when he said emergency.
Yes, that's what Rick Kowalczyk said. He said, now it's an emergency. He was joking too. But, so they're gonna reinvestigate the meters again and see if they can find, because if it's fluctuating up and down, that's fine, nobody cares. But when someone starts seeing, like we did, a steady climb, it's like, hey, wait a minute, we're not flushing more toilets all of a sudden and all this kind of stuff. And it hadn't even rained until recently, so it'd be really interesting probably to see next month's results with all this rain pouring in.
Now, there were a couple extra sheets of paper handed out at the SAM board meeting, so we don't have them in the packet here. And I'm unclear, I think that at least one of them was produced by Director Alfano, that shows something very illuminating, which is that the percentages are cyclical throughout the year, and when you compare them year to year for the same month, it tracks a lot better that way. And so the 3 months around now, I think it runs from September to November. Can't remember exactly which 3 months it was, but in some set of 3 months, year to year to year, Half Moon Bay's flow goes significantly higher, and then in other months, it's significantly lower on a percent basis.
Pumpkin Festival.
It's actually, yeah, it's the late summer months into early fall that have happened for years, and because I remarked that most flows go down in summer except for Half Moon Bay, they go up because they generate
Pumpkin Festival.
Pumpkin Festival and
Well,
people visiting the coast side because it's nice.
And for at least 3 years now, I've been asking for them to produce a graph where on a single sheet of paper, we can see from, say January to December or whatever, multiple years, and so we can see how each agency's flow goes up and down and compare it year to year, and then I think that it'll be more obvious when there's a problem and when it's a normal, traditional change. And I think we're just about to get that now that I've spent 3 years asking for it.
In parallel with this, you can probably remember all my rants here about why are we wasting all of our time doing this, and budgets going up and down every year, totally out of control. Had nothing to do with budgeting, it's just numbered games playing, going back and forth. I suggested a while ago that we just lock in the percents of 50 for Half Moon Bay, 30 for us, and 20 for Montera. That have historically been this average. And the amount of time and money we would save never talking about this again for at least 10 years would just be phenomenal. Budgeting would be simpler. We wouldn't have 1 year, we have to pay another $300,000, and the next year we're down $200,000. It just doesn't make sense because you can't budget that way and plan. I'm hoping that now that Half Moon Bay is spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, that maybe they'll see the light, and this will eventually come up with a simpler system. Other things that have been happening, and in case you folks don't know, Tony Poulin out there, Poulin, has been there for 34 years. And the thing,
If we have the agenda from the
you might
last
have,
meeting.
well, I don't have it here.
Yeah, I think it was 34 years.
It didn't, 34 years.
And
He retired.
It was some number of years and 8 months.
Like, and everybody said, he started when he was 10 years old, obviously, so.
I said that.
What besides the resolution we gave, and which we'll talk about later, they're changing the structure of SAM a little bit. It used to be the boss, the general manager, Tony, and then there's an administrative, officer, but everything went through Tony, and people have said, that's not the best plan in the world. They're splitting it up into 2 people to handle 2 major parts of the SAM business, just to make it more sensible, spread the work out, and they're hiring some more people. They've been doing job descriptions, so that whole process has been going on. And I think they're getting ready to finally look at the people, do the interviews and things like
Well,
that. So,
the 2 that are gonna be taking over what Tony was doing, Tony was the, technical services supervisor, which meant that everything except administrative services, which is a different supervisor, was under him. And so they're splitting up that responsibility into 2 people, but as Rick just said, but the key there is that that's a rotational position, and so after 1 year, the 2 guys doing it are gonna switch responsibilities, so that theoretically, both of them will know how to do everything.
which is a pretty good plan, and they think they can also absorb more of the, I'll just call it incidental engineering charges, where we have to go out and get engineers to come in and do little tiny projects and things like this. So they think they'll have the capacity to eliminate a lot of the small engineering fees that just add up to huge numbers over time.
Well, you left
That'll
out
help.
something, that's by hiring an in-house engineer.
Yeah, so those kind of structures changes are all happening.
When you say they are doing this, was this board driven or?
It goes under board approval. This is kind of the new general manager who's, in my opinion, working out very well. Very organized and efficient, and just a good person, I think. He comes up with the proposals, and then we have to approve the whole new structure. So. And it, he talked about the rates and the monies, and it looks like it's more people, but services, or it looked like a good plan.
So
after all the
an
months.
example, if I recall correctly, of that he gave on savings is that when we did the wet weather overflow project that was built below ground on our property here, Sam had to go out and hire a construction manager. And I believe that Rob is saying that if we'd had the in-house engineer, he would have been the construction manager.
Right. The on-site construction man, rather than hiring somebody to stand around and look at people and solve problems. Our guys can do that. So I think those are all good plans. At the latest meeting, other than giving Tony his plaque and everybody talking about what a wonderful job he's done for so many years, and then we all said goodbye to Alifano, who's going to be leaving. That will be his last meeting. I don't have the agenda with me here, so I don't remember.
Yeah, the November agenda's not in the packet here.
There weren't any, a lot of it was just reviewing these things, talking about the principles a little bit, so there weren't any other major earth-shaking items.
It's also a 46-minute meeting, so there wasn't that much on the agenda.
So that would be my report.
And the December meeting is canceled unless something urgent comes up, in which case there will be a special meeting called.
One thing I noticed on the flow report was, at the end of September, there was recently, a significant rainstorm, and the next day, there was a big dip
No,
in
it's
total flow.
Matthew, I actually raised this point at the SAM board meeting. It's not a significant rainfall because the scale is screwy. Notice that the top of the scale is half an inch.
I know, it was a
asked them
third,
if they
I
could
know, it was
force
less
the
than a
scale.
third of an inch, but, in the last 3 years, that's a significant rainfall. You know?
Most
so-
of that didn't even touch the ground.
Well, it got measured, and that's the water, the rain at the plant, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
All right, we'll move to the consent agenda.
But you see, when the ground is dry, there's gonna be very little inflow and no infiltration. So, that's why, a storm like that, when,
That still doesn't explain why the flow didn't just stay level then.
how do you see it not being level?
That's that's not that's the percentage distribution you're looking at there.
That has to do with the fact that not all four measuring locations get measured at the exact same time of day. So that's why these things look squirrely.
What are you gonna do about that?
That's the fifth thing that's not gonna keep me.
You're gonna sleep like a baby.
Yeah, it's been a long time, this is good.
Okay, well, how about
Close off
the
your mind.
consent agenda? Has it been keeping you up? Because that's where, we have arrived at the consent agenda.
I have a trivial editing correction for Chuck. Near the top of the second page where it says adjourn special meeting, it says the special meeting was adjourned to be continued. I think it should say to be continued.
Just an adjourned meeting. That'll try.
All right.
Okay.
All right, and with that, now you'll move that we take all consent?
So if nobody has anything to hold for discussion, I will move approval of the consent agenda consisting of item 5, October 16th regular meeting minutes, item 6, November 2014 warrants. The total isn't on the agenda. Item 7, approval of October 2014 financial statements. And item 8, approval of assessment district distribution number 4-14/15.
It's consent? All those in favor, say aye.
Was there a second?
Who's second?
I can second, I'll second it.
We'll give it to Jim. All right.
Okay.
I'll say it again. It's consent, no discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Oh, aye. All right, item 9. Report on seminars, conferences, and committee meetings. Anyone?
Rick, LAFCO?
Yep. I attended the LAFCO meeting yesterday. Joe, the real representative, wasn't there again, so I got to vote. There were a couple, there seemed to be in the area around Palo Alto and between Santa Clara and our county, there are lots of some small inconsistencies about somebody wants to develop a lot, but it has to go with somebody else's sanitary district and things like that. There are these very minor annexations going on. There's like 1 or 2 every couple months when we have a meeting.
That's all
So-
LAFCO's done for 20 years.
So all that went, there was a sphere of influence on one bigger lot that was, 4 lots that was interesting to discuss for a while. But the big issue comes down to, again, the grand jury report on the Harbor District. We talked about that a little bit, especially the part of, well, we have a whole new board coming on board in January. Should we delay the municipal services review until after the board has had a chance to do something, lay some plans, see what their plans are? But the vote was to, the kind of a general discussion about doing these huge municipal service reviews with only 1.5 people on the staff. So the county granted money to the budget a while ago to hire consultants to come in and do these. So we agreed to at least start the process, which is send out the request for bids for the municipal services review of the Harbor District. So a meeting or so ago, LAFCO agreed with the findings of the grand jury, which tells us to do the municipal services review and then look at the sphere of influence issues after that. So that process was launched. I would expect at the next LAFCO meeting, the bids will be back, and then we'll, talk about that again.
So
We
it'll be
also had our
January?
chapter, you want to talk about our chapter meeting too, or?
I was gonna say something about it, and maybe you can add to it.
Oh, go ahead.
Supervisor Dave Pine was there. I'm trying to remember.
This
how
is the
to-
chapter meeting, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, this is the,
Are you finished with the LAFCO report?
yes,
Did you bring up televising the LAFCO meeting?
yes.
And how'd that go?
She said it's all digitally, audibly recorded right now.
That's
and
really hard to
She
listen to.
just doesn't, their current plan is no. So we would have to put it on the agenda and override her.
All right, I would ask you to try and get there, because the video is much clearer just on the audio, and when you can see who's speaking, it's a lot easier to follow the discussion than trying to recognize voices only.
Yeah. Some other members I've just chatted with briefly don't seem to have any objections to it or anything.
To video?
To videoing. I mean, there's
Well,
no,
yeah, so I'm really
I think it's more momentum than anything else.
asking you to try and get it on the agenda and try and get it approved. In the 21st century, it's appropriate to do, and staff doesn't get to make the decision. That's the electeds that should decide that. So, now I'm trying to remember, how do we describe in one line what Supervisor Dave Pine was talking to us about?
Most of it was because there's another commission which has been formed, which is the Sea Level Rise Commission.
Okay.
And I'm serving on that, although I don't think we had a meeting since the last meeting I reported on it. They canceled the December meeting, but Supervisor Pine came in to be the speaker and mostly talked about that. And just, you can't describe it here in a few minutes because of the enormity of the problem. With any kind of reasonable sea level rise, SFO is underwater, Foster City's underwater.
And what did he say, 25% of
He
the
was
at-risk
under-
land in the state is in San Mateo County?
The last figure we all saw in the big meeting was 30%.
Okay.
30% of all problems in California are San Mateo County. So, because we are surrounded on both sides by water, we have the huge airports, we have Foster City. It's just so many billions of dollars of problems that it's just, people just look at it and shake their heads.
And we've allowed stuff to be built in inappropriate places.
So, at the Coastal Commission meeting, they were really hassling the Navy on that. But,
What's the actual location? I didn't follow that discussion.
Coronado down in San
Oh,
Diego, there's a little
okay.
strip down there, and the Navy wanted to put a big project in. Regardless of the endangered species and all that stuff, the Coastal Commission was basically telling the Navy, if you're building a project and you aren't concerned about future armoring, you need to sign an agreement with us that you will not come back later and ask for armoring. And the Navy guy said, well, I really don't have the authority, but we don't really think it's gonna be a problem, but of course, we would just come back in the future and ask you for armoring later. And the commissioner said, no, you didn't understand what I just said. So, and they asked if they wanted to delay it, and the Navy guy said, no, I need a vote right now, so they voted no. On sea level, because they wouldn't.
How close was the vote?
I wasn't there for the vote. I know it, I asked them.
So one of the things that Supervisor Pine spent a lot of time talking about is how this is all gonna be funded. And and they're looking at creating, what, he sort of danced around it a little bit, but he basically seemed to be saying a county-wide, some sort of district. I don't know if he was saying special district or just an assessment district. I think he was saying JPA with an assessment district, but he didn't get all the words lined up right. And so I objected to the JPA part, because the county is really, really good at forming JPAs to fly things below the radar, and he said, well, this one's too big, we're not gonna fly it below the radar.
You know, my biggest, it's not a concern, my biggest irritation over this is California's taking the lead, San Mateo's taking the lead in California. If we come up with this huge plan and start, you know, taxing everybody thousands of dollars to do this and actually succeed, our representative Jackie Spear at the first meeting we had, like back in June, said that some states like North Carolina, which have these windward islands, which are just going to be a disaster, have passed specific laws saying it is illegal to take climate change and sea level rise into consideration for any future development.
I thought what Dave said is that you can't even mention it when discussing the application.
You cannot mention it, you cannot use it, you cannot discuss it, you can't do anything. So they're gonna do nothing. We're gonna spend thousands of dollars of my money to do it right here. First big storm hits and they trash the windward islands, and they're gonna come back and say, okay, government, save us now. You need to give us billions and billions of dollars to do this. So I told Jackie, they need to be some kind of thing for the future, that if you're not gonna do anything, you don't get federal aid then, you know.
Could I ask, do what?
What?
Oh, the money you're talking about to do it, do what?
Oh,
Are they gonna raise Foster City? Are they gonna raise
Raise, levies,
SFO?
all kinds of things.
Are there gonna be tidal barriers?
That worked well in New Orleans.
Yeah, levies,
We've seen some pictures, just like the area around AT&T Park, where the stream or whatever it is comes in, I don't know what it's called, a river.
Mukabi
They
Cove.
have like 4 plans they can do for different versions of turning certain things into parks and barricades and levees, and that's just like one little tiny project. They aren't even at the point. I mean, somebody was actually discussing Golden Gate. Put in one of these because it's seasonal. It's like the biggest danger is during storms and stuff like this. So when you get the combination of sea level rise, king tides, and a storm, then it's gonna be 8 or 9 feet, and everything's just gonna be taken out.
Now, one of the things that a takeaway that I got from the meeting Tuesday night, the chapter meeting, when I spoke to Dave Pine, Jackie Spear, and Don Horsley at the end of the kickoff meeting, you said that was June, I don't actually remember what it was. I said, the first thing that you need to do when you're waist deep in a hole is stop digging. And they looked at me and I said, stop allowing development in the most at-risk locations. And Dave Pine looks at me in shock and he says, we can't do that. But by Tuesday night, it's at least a 90-degree change, close to 180. He's now saying that we need to look at that.
Yeah, and like Redwood City is planning on doing that right now. They're still
Cargill?
fighting it in Redwood City. There's some places that are all horrible places to put something.
Not to mention Cargill.
Yeah, and I don't wanna
But,
spend the whole discussion here, but
well,
the first part of the whole thing is not, I'll say a problem assessment. The first thing they do in other places who have done this, you go through and identify everything that's in trouble. You know, every agency,
mean everything that's
street,
at risk?
bridge, any buildings, hospitals, sewer plant exports, whatever it is, everything they go through. And they're talking about how we're gonna do that. Well, each group, will we do it for the coast side? They're not as worried about the coast side, they're more worried about increased erosion out here than like flooding Half Moon Bay or something like that, so.
however, the SAM plan is
There are
surrounded by
problems out here,
berm.
but the problems aren't the scope of SFO and losing all of Foster City and things like that. So this assessment's going to be probably how they launch, that's the next step. And that's gonna tell them, you know, how much stuff's in trouble.
So are we gonna get assessed for work that's only gonna be done on the other side? That's.
They
he-
have
he
no
was-
idea how that's gonna
he-
happen.
He very carefully avoided going anywhere near that.
Whether it's,
topic.
federal, state, county, cities, Santa Clara's already done a bunch of stuff. They have their water district, which runs the whole area out there, whatever it is.
Santa Clara Valley
They've
Water District.
already got one huge thing they're doing, they're raising everything 2 feet. They've launched the program, they're going.
Now, this.
Well, they're not waiting for anybody.
Yeah, we do need to have the SAM plant considered, because the berm there is only a storm surge berm, and, the projected sea level rise over 100 years is gonna top the berm.
Yep.
So.
Anyway, that's the report.
That could be expensive.
Thank you.
For us.
Money is astronomical. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable what this is gonna cost.
All right, item number 10, attorney's report.
No report.
Item number 11, treasurer's report.
Nothing further.
Would you like to add anything to item number 12, general manager's report? Administrator's report. Delia, is she back there?
No, she's in the office.
Okay, then the engineer's report, which is in the packet. Chuck, do you have anything to say about that?
Nothing further, they're finalizing our CIP finally, so hopefully we'll start going out to bids in January.
So what exactly is our engineer's involvement with Plan Princeton? Since that's mentioned in the engineer's report,
I don't know, actually.
why are we paying our engineer to be involved in that?
We did an existing conditions report. So, you probably have to tell the county how much capacity is out there, how much work would need to be done to do A, B, or C, whichever alternative they choose, or whatever. What do you think?
You know what the problem with Plan Princeton is? They didn't provide a none of the above option.
But they
Well,
heard
the
about
way
it.
they're dragging their feet, it's
They heard-
basically the
they
none of
heard-
the
That's the
above.
main
They
option.
heard about it at those public meetings, though. Okay, anything else?
That's it.
All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.